class, but really you just have to remember that if where you start doesn't work, try something else. And if you get to the point where you get a false statement, then it's just no solution and you can move on. So section 2.7 was piecewise functions, but let's talk about the transformations of functions first. So you've seen a lot of these in your quizzes, exams, really everything. It's a really important topic because it ties into further sections. So let's make sure we understand this and the basics of it at first. And I've drawn lines because I really want you to rewrite your equation every time so that you can see how it builds. And we have our parent function. So when I say it shifts 1 unit to the right, and you're going to the right, you are subtracting. And when it's a shift to the right or left, it's within the parentheses or tied to the x, whatever that means. And then when you have a vertical stretch, we're going to make that a vertical stretch at 2. That's a mistake. When you vertically stretch by 2, that goes out front of the x. And then when you reflect about the y-axis, it's always inside or right with the x. So that would look like this. Now, if it was a reflection about the the x-axis, it would be out here. But we're doing the y, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then it's a shift downward by 2 units. So it's going to look like this. The vertical shift goes there. So then it asks you to graph. And let's start with something basic to plug into that, like 0, negative 0 minus 1 is 1, negative 1, but it's in absolute value, so it's 1. So 2 times 1 minus 2 is 0. So we know we have a point at 0, 0. And we know the absolute value function looks like this. So we need to do values on either side. Let's go ahead and do negative 1. Negative 1 so this becomes a positive 1 minus 1, all in absolute value. So you get a 0. So you know that negative 1 is at negative 2. And so I can guess, because absolute value functions are vertical, are symmetric about their lowest point here, that my other point will be here. But you can also graph that, plug in points to find that. So you want to make sure you do that and then label your points. So then let's move on to the last one here. I don't have quite as much as for you as I had the other day because these questions are all pretty straightforward and the same most of the time. So we're just going to do that in that way. But let's look at this piecewise defined function here. I'm looking for my notes. These piecewise defined functions are nothing new. You've all seen them before. And I think it's pretty easy to overcomplicate them. But all this really is looking for where does this fall in the domain we have over here. So where does negative 2 fit? Well, negative 2 is less than negative 1. So we're going to plug in negative 2 over here. So 2 times negative 2 plus 4 equals 0. So this point is negative 2, 0. Now, when we want to look for negative 1 is not less than negative 1, so it doesn't work here. But it is greater than or equal to negative 1. So we're going to plug in -1 here. And this is what we'll see, which is 3 minus 1, -3, -3 minus 1. So we get -1, comma, -4. Now we need to look for this 3. 3 is not less than 3. So it has to be this one here where it says x is greater than or equal to 3. So we just automatically know it's -4. And we can make our point 3, comma, -4. Now we need to find 5. And 5 is obviously greater than or equal to 3. So we will go ahead and plug our 4 in again here. And get our point of 5, comma, -4. Now I just want you to graph those. So I'm going to put -2, comma, 0, -1, comma, -4, 3, comma, -4, and 5, comma, -4. Now, how do we graph this? To graph this, we have to look at those domain values that are up here for you. So let's look at the first one, which the one that fell into for the first one is this point. It says an x is less than -1. So x is less than -1 here. And you can assume it probably started somewhere up here. But then we need to look at point 2, which came from this part of the function, where x is less than 3, but greater than or equal to -1. So that also would look like this. Nope, just a second. That's wrong. When x is less than 3, so this would look like this. But could be an open circle there. And then we have new start this way for x is greater than or equal to 3. We would make that an open point. So this is all I have for this first week here of review. I wouldn't stress too much about graphing those piecewise functions, but if you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to go over them with you next weekend when I'm having my office hours. And other than that, stay safe and stay healthy. Email me or post on the discussion board if you need me. Have a great weekend and go Bucks.